Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel and to a very exciting video. If you follow me on my main page on Instagram, you already know this, and if you saw my story on the Elegant Edit recently, you might know this as well. I am officially living in the UK, which is so crazy to say, and it is such a relief after a very long immigration process. It was not fun, very challenging, but worth it in the end. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that today, why we kind of leaned toward the UK, and yeah, why I love it here, and also a bit about the process, but I'm not going to be going into detail on it just because obviously the visa process was very personal. There's a lot of personal information there. So I won't be going into a lot of detail about that. So a bit of background for you if you don't know my love story or how I ended up here, I'll quickly explain. So I met my husband Tom back on Instagram in 2020. We began following each other around 2018, never really spoke to each other until 2020. It was around springtime. And I saw that he was from the UK, he was a photographer, and I really loved his photos, so I followed him back. So yeah, he's from the UK, I'm from the US, more specifically North Carolina, but I grew up in Connecticut as well. So we began talking early 2020, very quickly fell in love, started dating July of 2020, but we couldn't meet in person because of the pandemic. So it was quite an interesting first year of our relationship. It took a year to meet in person. And in July of 2021, I flew to London Heathrow. We got to meet each other. I spent a beautiful month here in person. And we were apart a couple more times after that, but then in November of 2021, Tom proposed. And we got married July of 2022. And it's kind of been just a whirlwind since, in the most beautiful way. So after we got married in July of 2022, we knew that we had to decide where we wanted to live. We knew that going back and forth forever was not an option. We knew that we wanted to feel settled in one country, but it was incredibly difficult to decide where we wanted to end up. We spent a lot of time kind of weighing the pros and cons of living in the US versus living in the UK, and it was quite clear to me early on that it was going to be the UK. Now, I'm someone who is always trying to grow, get out of my comfort zone, do the things that scare me, do the things I want to do but that still scare me. And I knew that living in the UK would do that, and I just genuinely love it here. I find it incredibly beautiful. There are so many things I love about the UK that I'll share a little bit more in a second. So after we got married, like I said, in July of 2022, it took us a while, but then in spring of 2023, we finally felt like we made a decision and we chose the UK. Now, that was over 2 years ago at this point, which is crazy because this process has basically taken us that long, if you can believe it. It has basically taken us 2 years. We knew that choosing a partner who lived in a different country was not going to be easy. We knew that long distance was going to be hard. The immigration process would be hard. We just had no idea how hard it would be. So it was very challenging. And yeah, I'm going to go into that. But yeah, so we started off, I'll kind of tell you where we started off and where we ended up. And again, I'll share a few of the reasons we chose the UK. So a few of those reasons are, I guess number one is the quality of life. This is just me coming here many times and experiencing it and seeing it in other people here and loving it. So I feel like the quality of life here is probably a bit better. I feel like it's healthier overall. I think there is a culture around nature, being outside, going on walks. There are so many footpaths and trails that you could take just from your house alone if you live in the countryside like we do, which I have fallen in love with the English countryside, you guys. I was never really a city kind of gal, but after experiencing the countryside here in the UK, I'm like, okay, I am a country gal 100%. I love a city occasionally. I love being close to a city, but living in the countryside. And again, all the footpaths, you can walk through open fields. It is incredibly beautiful and really beneficial for you. So yeah, access to fitness, really. I know you can do a lot in your own home, or if you live in a big city, you can just step out your door and go for a walk, but there's something really beautiful and beneficial about being somewhere more quiet, peaceful, and again, with all the access and all the trails and footpaths, it is really incredible. Coming from the US where we don't really have that, I feel like a lot of like farmland, you know, all of that's very private. You can't walk through farmland or anything like that. It's kind of challenging. You just walk around your neighborhood, or you drive somewhere and then you go for a walk or a hike. It's just nice to be able to walk out your front door and be able to do that, and we can do that here. Speaking of health, food is another thing. The quality of the food here, I believe, to be better than it is in the US. I honestly am not 100% sure, but it tastes better in my opinion, and you have, I think healthier, high quality food is more accessible here in the UK. I think in the US it's a bit more expensive and it's a bit harder to access higher quality foods. In the UK you can go out to eat or buy things from the grocery store, and it is still very decent quality for a pretty decent price overall. And that is very important to me as someone who's kind of been very health focused, especially recently. I've been learning so much about what's good for you, what's not good for you. There's a lot of changes I want to make, and those things and that kind of lifestyle, it's easier for me to live that here. Another pro I want to mention is that travel is more accessible here as well. So being so close, and technically being a part of Europe, being so close to the rest of Europe, there's so much travel that we could do, so many different countries we could see and explore. And traveling or flying is also more affordable to different countries than it is in the US. Like if you were to fly from one state to another in the US, it could be quite expensive, probably even more than you think. Whereas in the UK, if you want to fly to a European country, it's so much easier and more affordable. I'm not saying everyone can do it. Some people don't have the money for that. But you might find that a lot of Europeans, including people in the UK, are a bit more maybe well-traveled because it's a bit easier for them to do that here. Whereas if you're from the US, I believe only half maybe of Americans even have a passport. So keep that in mind as well. That was a pro for us. I've seen a lot of the US in my life. I've been to many states, and I'm excited to be in a different part of the world, exploring a different part of the world. I also like to look at the UK as something between the US and the rest of Europe. Like, there are some like qualities, if you will, about the US or the UK that remind me of the US, and also some qualities that remind me of the rest of Europe. So I feel like the UK is a nice blend of things that I really want for my life and for our life as a couple. And again, it's not as much of like a kind of like a culture shock. It's a bit more of an easy transition coming to the UK from the US. And obviously English is spoken here, which is also a plus, that I don't have to learn a new language. It's, you know, if you have to, that's an added challenge, and it's a beautiful thing to do, but you don't have to do that in coming to England if you already speak English. I'm not going to go into detail on this one. I think we all know what I'm referring to, but safety is another thing that I think about, and one of the reasons we chose the UK. I know that there is no, you know, I do want to say, I know there's no perfect place to live. I am aware of that. There are issues in all countries. There are pros and cons to all countries. I feel like for us, there were more pros maybe than cons for living in the UK. So that is why we leaned toward the UK. You're always gonna, I've had to accept in the past few years, especially once we decided to live in the UK, that I am always gonna be missing someone or something. I am always, no matter where I am, whether we chose the US or the UK, I'm gonna be missing people, I'm gonna be missing places, things, you name it. I will never be fully, oh, that was gonna sound really sad. I was like, I'm never gonna be fully whole again. And that's not true, but you know, I think that I didn't want to let the connections go here. I really wanted to continue growing and becoming more independent here. And I think I've really grown into a woman since coming to the UK. I really have. I've really become more of myself. I feel like I'm healing, I'm growing, I'm becoming more me. And not that that would be impossible in the US, but sometimes being away from what you've always known can really help with that. To my friends and family in the US, I love you guys, I miss you guys, and I hope you know this decision was nothing against you guys. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make, and I know how that might sound. I know that that sounds very privileged, and I recognize that it is a privilege to be able to choose where I want to live between two wealthy nations. I understand how that sounds, but it was also the hardest thing I've ever had to do. but I am very grateful and very blessed that I even had the opportunity to do this. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, and also say that, again, pros and cons no matter where you are. And now I'm just going to share a little bit about the immigration process and what it was like for us, and I'm not going to go into detail. As I said, I'll just share the basics with you, and again, if you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer them depending on how personal they are. Send me an Instagram DM if you want to. So this process, like I said, started back in 2023. That was when we chose to live in the UK. So at that point, the first thing Tom and I did was look into immigration lawyers. Now, you do not need a lawyer to help you go through this process. If you feel confident doing it on your own, more power to you. It's less money you have to spend, and that's great. You go for it. Tom and I went into this kind of blind, and so we really didn't know where to start, and we needed help. So we didn't know anyone in our close family or friend group who had really been through this between the US and the UK. So we were really starting from zero. So we had to speak to many different lawyers. We paid for many consultations, and for us it was worth it. I think I'm going to share a few tips throughout this video as well. If you are going through the US-UK immigration process, specifically coming to the UK, or anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, definitely, if you don't know what you're doing, have consultations. Write down all of your questions. It doesn't matter how ridiculous they might sound. Even if the answer is super simple, at least you asked it, and it's just better to get all your questions out. So we wrote down everything. The issue was that we noticed that after paying for a consultation, consultations usually for us cost around 100 to 200 pounds per consultation. So we would find an immigration lawyer, have a consultation with them, they would answer our questions, and the issue was that after they did that, we felt like we had even more questions based on their answers. So we were like, oh my gosh, we need another consultation. So we ended up having quite a few, maybe a handful of consultations. We paid for each one, which wasn't fun, but to us, it was worth it. We just wanted to make sure we had all the answers before moving forward with something so big and something so expensive. I forgot to mention as well that we did also speak to US immigration lawyers. We wanted to get a feel for both sides to see, especially when we weren't sure where we wanted to live, but mainly once we decided, we just wanted to be sure the UK was the right option. And so we spoke to a couple US immigration lawyers to see if it would be cheaper, to see if it'd be easier. And at that point though, I think Tom and I were pretty set on the UK. So no matter what the US lawyer was gonna say, we still knew we wanted to be here. I did want to say that after speaking to many immigration lawyers, we found one that we really trusted. We found one that made the whole process sound so easy, and they answered all of our questions. And again, part of the issue we ran into with the consultations and the immigration lawyers, keep this in mind. If you ask them questions, they are only going to answer what you ask. They are not, most likely they will, because they didn't do this for us. Everyone we spoke to did not answer, they didn't give us extra information. They didn't provide us with anything extra. If we didn't ask, they weren't telling us, which was frustrating because it meant once the consultation was over, you'd have to pay more to speak to them again, usually. Sometimes they said, oh, we'll answer more questions in an email afterward, and sometimes they didn't even respond back to us. So yeah, finding the right immigration lawyer is important. Someone you trust, someone who makes the process seem easy and doable, really. A tip that I have is before you go into this process, when you start researching about the immigration process and about spouse visas for the UK, or any visa technically, know that through Google, you are not going to get case-specific answers. And that is why consultations with lawyers, in my opinion, are important, because if you don't know what you're doing, you've never done this before, you could easily make a mistake. You could easily forget something in your application, and it could cause delays or even denial of your application. So you are not most likely, unless your case is super simple and straightforward, then you are not going to get case-specific answers, which is why speaking to a lawyer is important. Another thing we had to keep in mind were the requirements for a UK spouse visa. And I want to say specifically, I have a spouse visa. I am married to Tom. I am his wife. He sponsored me to come here, so we have a spouse visa. There are skilled worker visas. There are oh, I'm blanking. So the spouse visa, the fiance visa, and maybe student visas as well. So there are different types. I don't know about the others really. I can only speak on the spouse visa, so keep that in mind. So some of the requirements are earning, so Tom would have to earn a certain amount of money. We would need to prove our relationship through certain things. So if we have a place together, we would need to show proof of like bills together. We would need to show proof of our relationship through photos. So our lawyer, the one we went with, told us we needed to have photos together. We needed to put them in a document, and we needed photos from at least 2 years ago. I included more than that just to be safe. I included photos from FaceTime before we ever met in person, photos from when we just met in person and onward. So I included everything, and we've almost been together for 5 years. So it took a long time to gather all of that proof. On top of that, we also needed communication records. So I took screenshots of text messages, phone calls, like all the proof of messaging and communication. And again, it was supposed to be at least 2 years prior, but I included stuff from the very beginning before we were even dating, just to be safe. So all of that, those are requirements. I'm trying to think, I know there are maybe some more, but yeah, those are some of the bigger requirements, I guess. So there were a couple reasons why we weren't eligible right away, and also why we faced a couple hurdles throughout this process. I'm not going to go into detail on what those were because, well, number one, it's not helpful to you. Everyone's case is different, and this is just our specific situation. So knowing this is not helpful to you, it's personal. So I'll leave that to ourselves. But one of the biggest things that stopped us was that in April of 2024, one of the big requirements had changed. So we were working toward eligibility at that point. We hadn't yet met our lawyer that we did go with. We were still speaking to other lawyers at that time, but we were working toward eligibility so that we could be close to the finish line. We were 2 months away from being eligible, and in April of 2024, a huge requirement changed and we were no longer eligible. And it was really heartbreaking and hard to accept. So we kind of knew that change could happen, and we just were hoping and praying it wouldn't, and unfortunately it did. So that set us back. And again, later that year, that's when we met our lawyer and things were able to move forward a little bit more, but it still took a long time. So we thought we'd be applying. We met our lawyer in August. We thought we'd be applying in October. We shared some more information with the lawyer, and he recommended that we wait a bit longer. So we were waiting, we were apart. And it's funny how Tom and I thought by getting married before applying for a visa, we thought that that would mean we wouldn't ever have to spend any more time apart. But boy, we couldn't be further from that, couldn't be further from the truth. We did have to spend more time apart, more time than we would have ever wanted. In our relationship, in the beginning, we just wanted to be together. We didn't want to be apart, and unfortunately, that almost backfired in a way. Like, had we just spent more time apart in the beginning, maybe it would have worked out better in the end. But instead, we didn't want to be apart in the beginning, and it led to us having to be apart, you know, down the road. So it kind of, I don't know, maybe it would have happened either way, but it wasn't fun. We really, really didn't want to be apart. We really tried to avoid it, and we just couldn't. I had to go to the US to apply. I couldn't do it from here. So yeah, we had to be apart, which was unfortunate, but eventually we had to accept that there was no other way to do this. So eventually we became eligible in, I guess technically it was April of 2025, this year, we became eligible. And it was such a relief. We were so excited. So I had to fly back to the US because, again, I'm from the US, and I had to apply from there. And another requirement, something I had to do while I was in the US, was a biometric appointment. So if you don't know, biometrics are your fingerprints, and you just have to kind of prove your identity. It's kind of like a background check. They get a photo of you, all of that. And so I actually had to go to Atlanta, Georgia to do that. So Tom and I were in constant communication with our lawyer while I was in the US, and they were kind of guiding us through the process. You're basically paying the lawyer to fill out the application for you. So all the proof that we had, photos, all of that, we sent to the lawyer, and they applied for us, which was such a huge help. Again, It does cost more money, obviously, to pay a lawyer to do this for you, but if you don't know what you're doing and you're going into it like we did, blind, I highly recommend getting an immigration lawyer, because for us, that wasn't even the most expensive part. The visa itself was incredibly expensive. I will not share the amount that we spent, but it hurt our wallets and it hurt our hearts. And we also paid for the priority service, which added more money to the cost. You don't need to do this. The reason we paid for the priority service was so that we didn't have to spend even more time apart. I was already in the US, yes, but by paying for the priority service, our application would be approved within 31 business days from submitting your biometrics. So we applied. The next week I went to Atlanta, Georgia, because that was the closest biometric location. If you don't pay for priority service, there might be a closer location to you, I'm not sure. But if you pay for priority, there are only 4 locations across the US. And thankfully Atlanta was only 4 hours from where my family lives in North Carolina. So we just took a little road trip for, it was one night actually, in 2 days. So if you saw my Atlanta vlog, I didn't mention why we were there. That's why we were there. And the lawyer helped us set up that appointment. I thought it would take a long time to get an appointment. I wasn't sure how it would go. I got an appointment so fast. It was so easy. I asked the lawyer, I was like, could you do next week, next Monday? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, great. So we did that first thing in the morning, the day after I got to Atlanta, and it was really quick and easy. Not the friendliest people working there, but I got it done. And at that point, once that was submitted, we had to wait 31 business days. And I think it was approved maybe within 27 or 28 business days. And that was it. So I got an email from the lawyer, and I remember calling Tom and saying, we have an email from the lawyer. And also at the biometrics appointment, they took my passport so they could put the visa in my passport. So I didn't have that, so I couldn't travel outside of the US. I just had to stay where I was, which was fine. I stayed in North Carolina the whole 2 months that we were apart this time. And it was approved, and we were just so relieved, so grateful. It almost didn't feel real yet that I could be living in the UK. I don't think it does even now, but maybe it'll kick in after quite a few months of being here. But yeah, it was such a relief, so exciting. And after 2 years of working toward this, and almost 5 together, we finally did it. So again, if you don't know anything about this process, I think no matter what visa you get, it is a 5-year process to becoming a legal citizen and having indefinite leave to remain. And at that point, you can also apply, I think, to become a citizen. So this is a 5-year process. So technically, my visa lasts for 2 years and 9 months. And at that point, I need to reapply. But the good thing about that is that I can do it from the UK. This first time was the hardest. It is probably going to be the most expensive and the hardest. After that, like I said, I can apply within the UK, so Tom and I never have to be apart again, which is such a blessing. We are so, so grateful for that. The unfortunate bit is that this is only getting harder. So if you want to apply, you need to do it now, and you need to work toward eligibility and get it done sooner rather than later. That's all I'm gonna say. This is only getting more expensive. It's only getting harder. And if you're going through this, we feel for you. We understand it is not fun or easy. Yeah, we understand how you feel, and you're gonna get through it. You will be on the other side, and it is such a wonderful feeling when you get there. So in 2 years and 9 months, we're gonna see how we feel. If we wanna reapply, we definitely will, which I could see that happening. I don't think 2 years and 9 months of living here is gonna change my mind about being here. If anything, I think I'm only gonna fall more in love with it, form more friendships, and just grow even more connected to the culture, the people, everything. I've also been here many times, and I think that that's a tip I have as well, is that if you are hoping to move to a different country, spend as much time there as possible as a visitor. I've been here many times. I've gotten used to it. It does help that my husband was here, and he kind of helped with the transition and showing me what life is like in the UK. If I was doing it completely alone, that is incredible. If you're doing that, you're planning to just move to a new country on your own, you're amazing, and that is incredibly challenging, and I see you. I couldn't do that, I don't think. Maybe now I'm at a point where I'm like, maybe I could have done it, but I'm also glad that I had someone to go through it with who was already born here and who knows what it's all about. So that helped. And also, again, I've been here many times. So that's my advice too, is if you can visit as often as possible, definitely do that, because it helps with the transition and there will be less culture shock. I think my last kind of tip and piece of advice for this video is also to, when you are apart from your partner, if you're going through this like we did, find ways to stay connected, whether you're apart or still together in person. If you're working toward eligibility or you're in the waiting process, find joy in the waiting, find excitement in the waiting, do things that are still beautiful and lovely, see friends, see family, travel as much as you can, but make sure to save a lot. Save anything you can on the side, because sometimes the cost of this might surprise you and things might be, again, more than you think. But still, if you can, travel, see the world, do beautiful, exciting things. Tom and I have managed to do that, and I think that that has helped us a lot in the waiting. Like, this could have been such a miserable process. It could have been way more stressful and frustrating, and it was stressful and frustrating, but what I feel really grateful for is that Tom and I always found excitement. I think being from 2 different countries and falling in love with someone from a different country, things are always going to be exciting, I think, because you're always learning something new about your person, about the country you're in. There's always something new to discover and something new to do, new places to see. So try to do that as much as you can. Lean on family and friends. Honestly, the support of family and friends throughout this process is huge. If you have to go through it alone, I'm very sorry, because that is really tough. But we had so much support from loved ones, and thank God for that. They helped us to get out of our heads a bit, and they also helped us to, or not helped us, but they also like agreed with us that, yeah, this is insane. And spending time with loved ones can get your mind off of it as well. I know for me and Tom, like we knew when to put the conversation away. We needed to, you know, there were some days where we had to research, we had to speak to lawyers, we had to focus on it a lot, but then once that was over, we'd put our laptops away, put our phones away, reconnect, and know that this is temporary, and not to ever let it come between us. It is us against the problem. I think that's important to see your relationship as a team. Tom and I have always been a team. We are very strong together, and now we are even stronger together after going through this. I like to joke, it's not really a joke, but I like to joke that we are now the most patient people you will ever meet. We had to wait to meet in person for a year. We had to wait to become eligible. We had to wait to, you know, wait for this visa process to be over. So we are very patient people at this point. If we weren't before, we definitely are now. And lastly, I just want to say how grateful I am, how blessed I feel that this has worked out. It was a long time coming. It was a long journey. It was not fun, but we are on the other side now. It was amazing to be reunited with Tom at the end of May. I flew to London, and saying goodbye to my family was really hard, but when I got here, I just was so happy. I posted a video on Instagram that I really love. You can check it out. It's a pinned video on my main page, and you'll see it's a passport, and it's a video that I kind of filmed throughout my journey from the US to the UK on my flight and everything. And yeah, reuniting with Tom was crazy, because anytime we've spent apart, whenever we reunite, we hug each other, and I'm like, you're real? Like, this is real? You're my husband? This is our life? Like, it's really crazy, and I still can't believe it. It still doesn't feel real that now I get to call the UK home, but the English countryside is home. What a blessing. Like, it is incredible, you guys. So hopefully you'll be seeing some more travel content from me throughout Europe, throughout the world, I hope. We want to kind of settle down, though. We need to get our own place. As you know, we've been staying with friends, or with family, I mean, which has been a huge blessing, a huge help to us, but we're a married couple. We want to have our own space, so we're hoping to do that very soon. I can take you on that journey a little bit with us, and also just settling down. I'm going to be looking for work. I already am looking for work. I am very excited to feel more settled here. So I'm gonna take you along. I'll continue with vlogging our daily life and our days out in the UK, hopefully some US visits in the future, and yeah, just a lot more from me. Hopefully more fashion, beauty, sit down videos too, so keep an eye out for that. And that is it for this video. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Whether you just watched it to learn more about the process or what we went through, or whether you watched it because you're going through this too, thank you so much for supporting. And I wanted to get this video up before anything else. I have a pack with me going up next, so we're gonna go back in time a little bit to when I was in the US packing for the UK. So that'll go up next, so keep an eye out for that. Those videos always do really well on my channel, so I hope you enjoyed that one. I'll be posting it very soon because it's basically ready to go. I just wanted to get this one up first to share the good news with you. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.